Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Travel Bros podcast. We are Travel Bros, Jamie Haas and myself, Joey Redman. A little bit about myself is I have been doing luxury hotel travel for the last 10 years in over 40 countries. My co-host over here, Jamie Haas, has stayed at every hotel at Disney World to date. He's been to Disney every year of his life since birth, which is pretty intense. He's an expert generally on the Caribbean and also does luxury travel with his family as well. And we've now started this podcast. We've been friends for a while, and we both have a huge passion for luxury hotels and luxury hotel travel experiences. So we've gotten together to share a little behind the scenes and a breakdown of some of our favorite properties. Episode 2 is here, and we're going to be talking about the Four Seasons Hampshire, which is located just outside of London in England.
Yeah, Joey, I'm really excited to talk about this property. It is one that, when you booked it, wasn't one that had been on my radar, but it looked like you had a really good time. So excited to hear about it. Why don't you tell us how you ended up here at this property and how you booked it?
Sure. So origin story really comes down to we did a 5-week vacation through Europe this summer. That's something we had done the last couple summers. It's worked out for us pretty well. We started actually in Austin, Texas, because believe it or not, Dallas does not have a flight to Amsterdam, but Austin does on KLM. So we drove down to Austin, took the KLM flight direct to Amsterdam, got to check out the new Sky Club in Austin, which is quite nice and not crowded, which, man, some of these Sky Clubs and other lounges these days are pretty brutal with crowds. But it was a reasonable crowd. Yeah, it's a newer lounge, so that was nice. Got into Amsterdam. We did a week at the Hyatt Regency Amsterdam. Flew KLM again over to Lisbon. Spent some time at the Hyatt Regency Lisbon. Then we drove to the Conrad Algarve, which I think is definitely on the list to do a review. That was another, about like this property, I did a little bit of research, and then I loved it once we got there. It was so underrated or beat expectations, I guess. And then we drove up to Porto to the Intercontinental, and then we flew to England on tap Portugal, which was a choice. And we did 3 nights here at the Four Seasons before taking British Airways back home. I'm kind of a big fan of British Airways. We were talking about that before. It's not the most loved airline in luxury travel or even like on the miles and points side, but I kind of like it, especially for the trip home, especially if you can sneak your way into first. The excise tax is pretty ugly. It's not the best. If you can do a layover, you can usually chop it down, but I couldn't make the dates work, so we did 3 days in England. My daughter's like right at the end of her Peppa Pig phase, so we really wanted to go see Peppa Pig World. And the hotels in Southampton are pretty bad, and I didn't want to be driving a car in London. So I was trying to find something that was not in Southampton. I think the nicest hotel in Southampton is a Hilton Garden Inn, so that should tell you what you're working with there. I didn't want to be in London and deal with driving in London, so I was trying to find something in the middle, and I found this Four Seasons. That's a solid 40-minute drive, I'd say, outside of Heathrow, and here we are. That's kind of how we wound up at this hotel.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So that was going to be my next question, right? How far is it? So sounds like you were driving, but how else could you get there? Is there, if you didn't have a car, is it, seems pretty close. How could you get there?
Sure. So you're right. I did drive. We rented a car at Heathrow for the few days because we had to get around. Personally,
Americans love cars. Americans love our cars.
I'm a very car-centric traveler. So as you learn on this podcast, most of the time I'm going to have a car. However, I think it's helpful to have a car there. There's a lot of attractions that are in a pretty close distance. Like Jane Austen's house is very close to this property. If you're a big, novelist. I mentioned Peppa Pig's, not really close, but 45 minutes, which it's also tied to a adult park, like Paul Paulton's, something like that, which looked pretty fun. There's a place called Bird World that's not too far if you're into birds. But there's a lot of just random stuff in the English countryside. So I will say you're not going to speed there. I think there is a speed camera about every half mile from when you leave London till you get out into the countryside. So that was definitely pretty brutal. I think I screen capped some Uber options. I think an Uber executive ran about 111 pounds from Heathrow to the hotel. A luxury car was 162 euros, and then If you wanted to book through the hotel, you could book a S-Class Mercedes for 185. I said euros, it's pounds, so let's fix that real quick. Yeah. And then the Mercedes, you could do like a Mercedes van for 195 pounds. And then they also offered car service to Gatwick, which adds about 40 or 50 pounds to each model, which I found it pretty interesting. They offered rides to Gatwick. Now, if you do decide to drive to the property, self-parking is free, valet parking is free, which was really nice. They don't even do valet tickets. They're just kind of on top of it, which I appreciated. And for me, I'll just get into this now. The Four Seasons app, in my opinion, is the number one reason to stay at a Four Seasons hotel. Their app is amazing. It integrates all your reservations, and then anytime you want to do something on property, now, I'm even talking before you're on property, your reservation will show up in the app. I booked all of our dinners in the app. Someone will reply to you within minutes, and then same thing, like instead of picking up the phone and asking for my car, grab the app, say, we're leaving in 10 minutes. Car is always there. And it's just, the app is just, a lot of apps I think are like great in practice and terrible in reality. It's like in theory, this app's going to work great, but I've never had a bad experience with the Four Seasons app. Someone's always replied to me. And from talking to other people too, it works great in multiple languages and things. It just seems like an incredible luxury service that they've really integrated well into their program.
And that's all right through the app, right? You're not using WhatsApp or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really hate that sometimes. There's another property I've stayed at where it's like you have your butler service on WhatsApp. And I mean, you could go unread for 4 or 5 hours. I mean, I was still getting the service that I needed, but it's like, okay, like, at the point I could pick up the phone and call you and get something in 30 seconds. It's like, what is a 4-hour delayed service where, I'll bring up another example on the app real quick. Just it wasn't at this property, but we stayed at the Four Seasons Mexico City last year. We did the car service through the hotel, and on the way home we were like running a little late. Like Mexico City airport, Mexico City traffic's rough, so I was like kind of nervous. Our car shows up and it was the wrong car. Like we had paid for an upgraded car, and I was like, I don't know if we can really wait. Like let's just hop in this thing. I messaged the hotel while in this car in the hour drive to the airport, and they refunded me the difference of the car plus $20 while I was still in the car.
That's
like,
awesome.
That's how easy it is to handle a situation like that. I was like, hey guys, it's no big deal. We got in our car, but we paid for X. It was like a $30 premium, and they just refunded me $50 while still in the car.
Oh, that's awesome.
And when you consider your alternatives for most hotels where you're either going to sit on the phone for 30 minutes and explain the whole situation, write some long-winded email that's probably going to get sent to 3 or 4 different people before you it'll get resolved, but it's like, how much time and effort are you putting out? And I mean, the fact that I did it while still in the car, I think is just a great testament to how well that app truly works.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And one thing I've noticed with Four Seasons, it's that employees are empowered to do things. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to get 6 levels of management approval to say, okay, let's refund this guy $50 or whatever it is. Like I feel like Four Seasons does a good job empowering their employees.
I agree.
All right, so now we've gotten to the property. Let's talk about maybe first how you booked it, how you decided on your room type, initial thoughts of your room when you got there.
Sure. So I used the Four Seasons Preferred Partner Program, which is available to all Four Seasons hotels, and it really can bring a lot of value into Four Seasons. Four Seasons kind of leans to be my, like, if I can find a cheaper priced Four Seasons, like, I'm in. That's where I want to be. Daily full English breakfast for 2 people. And I'll get into this later, but the breakfast menu was super complicated. Too complicated for me, but we never really got charged for anything, so I don't think it really mattered. I don't know if they have different packages where they're worried about people consuming different things, but I didn't have a problem. So that was easy. I think you can also get in-room dining for your breakfast at this property if you're interested. It comes with a $100 guest credit. I think if you book into the suites and specialty suites, you're looking at $200 in credit, and then upgrade based on availability. Now, we picked the last weekend of summer in London for our trip. So this place was at capacity pretty much. We did book I don't remember my room type name here. You should fire me.
That's all right.
I have it in here somewhere. There's like so many room types that are kind of the same. I had a Garden Deluxe room. which I was hoping to get into the heritage room, which is the next upgrade path. Didn't happen, but let me tell you, the garden room was great. One thing I will say is we were on the ground floor, which I'm usually a huge enemy of. I don't know. It just feels like you don't have that kind of privacy. However, this is a really old building, which we'll get into. All the walkways, they've like restored all the old walkways that they used in, I don't know, the 14 or 1500s, but they're enclosed in glass. So you can't actually walk through the gardens inside the property. So we had a hotel room on like the interior of the building looking out into a garden, but it's essentially a sealed off garden, right? Because all the walkways are like englassed and windowed. So no one can actually walk near your room.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so even though you're on the ground floor, it doesn't sound great. There's no way for people to walk by you because it's just an enclosed garden. So that didn't really bother me. The room had a lot of light. We had a humongous oversized tub in the room. Some of the rooms actually have like a clawfoot tub depending on where they are. Just keep in mind this is a building from the 18th century. The room sizes don't seem to be super consistent. Some of the decor is different. And the more I looked around at the rooms, Four Seasons has done an amazing job making this look like a beautiful property. So much so it was highlighted in Architecture Digest. But I think it's one of those things where it's like, my room is in this corner, and it's like, it was just, like I said, it was built in the 18th century. This is not a, 2020 build where they're like, every room's going to be the same size and, function the same. So I think there's a lot of different character and quirks in the room. The shower was a little small considering how big the room was, but it was the best water pressure. I mean, it almost knocked me over, which I do appreciate.
That's nice.
Yeah, but it was a smidge on the small side. I mean, but that's like nitpicking as well. They had those like Samsung frame TVs, but it was an LG version, a big 65-incher up on the wall, which was really nice. Yeah. One other thing to touch too, the base rooms, they're just shy of 500 square feet. You got terry bathrobes for everybody. My daughter came with us, and she had like a little mini one that she loved wearing. And I think Four Seasons is really good at that. And the property in total is 134 rooms. 22 of those are suites. And there's some really cool premium suites. If you got the big budget, you're ready to do a drive outside of London. If you ever look at pictures of the front facade of the property, the whole entire third floor is a ginormous like 3-bedroom suite, and it looks really cool.
That's nice.
Yeah, a little bit out of my price range, but listen, the staff and service was so good here. If you want it, we can definitely help you find your way into there. But even if you're just doing like a base room or some of the smaller suite stays, I think it's really an incredible property. And one other thing I want to touch on too, while we're just kind of in preferred partner in the room type, is most Four Seasons will do a welcome amenity if you're staying on a preferred partner rate. Our welcome menu was incredible. So I wrote down everything we got just so I wouldn't forget. We walk in the room, and they had written in like these cool markers on our full-size window, like welcome to the Four Seasons Hampshire. And they put my daughter's name on it. So she was already super stoked. She was like, they put my name, Ruby. She's like 4. So she can like spell her name, but she was like, this room is for me. So that was cool. We got a full bottle of wine. We got a like kid's bottle of fresh squeezed apple juice and like a little kid's pink straw. We got 3 apricot scones, which are from their bakery, which they did incredible baked goods, especially like for your breakfast and such. We got a fruit plate with like pear, orange, apple, and then we got these delicious Madeleine cookies that were also from the bakery. And I mean, just for a simple like welcome amenity, I thought that was really great. I thought they did a pretty outstanding job on that as well.
Yeah, I think Four Seasons does a good job there. And one cool thing, depending on, if you're booking a Four Seasons preferred partner rate, we can do our best to customize it to, if you're there for a special occasion, if you're going with the kids and you want something that's more kid focused, like that's something we can definitely try to organize and steer it in that direction. All right. So think about the property. I mean, I know you said 500 square feet was a base room. Some people may not be super familiar. That's a really good size base room, especially when you think about an old hotel like that. You don't get that very often. A lot of times you're, 300 and some square feet in an old hotel room. So that's a really good one to know. While you were there, I know you like to, do some activities on property or check out the spa. Did you get a chance to look around or do much while you were there?
I did. We actually we did one day at Peppa Pig World, and then we actually did a full day on property just to kind of, see everything that was going on there. One interesting thing about this property is it is very kid focused. So like if you don't want to spend some time around kids, I was there the last week in the summer, so obviously it was just overrun with kids. But there's a lot of really adult centric things, but it's also very kid friendly. And I think even if you don't like kids, maybe it's not the number one place you want to be. If you're like if you're like, hey, we live in London, or we're somewhere, or you're like, this is our anniversary trip, and like, we're leaving our kids behind the first time, maybe not the property for you. But I think as long as you're like tolerant of kids in your general vicinity, I think you could get away with like an adults only weekend here and still have a good time. Part of it is like I said, the property was full, and I felt very much like it didn't feel full. Outside of seeing a lot of people at breakfast, the hotel itself is over 500 acres. So like the second you get into like the daytime, you've got people doing so many different activities so far around the property, you kind of lose everyone pretty quick, and you can definitely keep to yourself. As far as the spa goes, I didn't do any specific spa services, but all of the pools are integrated into the spa. So this being a property from before the United States of America was even a country, back in the 18th century, they've done a real cool job restoring a lot of stuff. So the spa is actually built into the old steeple house in the bell tower. So like where they used to keep the horses. So the spa is actually really long, like it's like the horse stables converted to a building. And then there's actually some indoor outdoor access. Like the way they restored the building, the women's spa stuff runs down one side, and the men's spa stuff runs down one side, and you can actually like go through the middle, like where I think the horses got to do their walk around. So that's all kind of still there, which is pretty neat. And then if you look at the spa, so you've got an outdoor heated pool that I didn't go into. You've got an adults only indoor pool, which has family hours, which for a couple hours of the day. And I don't remember them, but based on weekends and holidays, it's different. But you can pretty much most of the day have a private pool day there as a grown-up. And then there's actually a place called Sharky's Reef on the other side of the spa, which is it's about a lap pool length of a kid's just like actual pool that's maybe 2.5, 3 feet deep. And then on the other side of it is almost a full mini water park. There's like a 4-meter slide that you can probably do 3 or 4 kids wide. And then there's all these like sprayers and buckets, and you can like spin things and make the water do different stuff. I mean, my daughter spent a solid 2 hours there, and I was tired and she was not. And we'd see other kids kind of come in and out of there. But just to be, a free part of your Four Seasons spa, to have 2 adult pools and this kids water park and pool, I think already just states to like the vast amount of stuff you can be doing at this property.
Yeah, so I had no idea all that was there. That's pretty awesome. And I think you mentioned it. Is that included, or did you have to pay to just have access to the spa?
Yeah, so that was all included. We didn't have
to fantastic.
Transact. Yeah, we didn't have to transact or do anything. There's some steam rooms, sauna rooms, that kind of standard stuff there as well that you can access like from the locker rooms. We didn't have a charge as well. There was always someone cleaning the spa at all hours when I was there. I went in the morning, at night. There's always someone like restocking shoes, slippers. They were cleaning. They were really on top of that part of the property. I was very impressed.
So I also didn't realize that the place was as large as it was. And I am looking at this activity sheet that you sent over. This is fantastic. Did you guys, you were only there for a couple of days. Did you do any of these activities, or did you get to see anyone doing any of them?
So we didn't do anything. We saw a lot of people doing them, so I can give some feedback at least. We really wanted to do pony grooming.
I was just looking at that.
Yeah, they have those Shetland ponies, the real famous ones with the big hair, for anyone that knows what they look like. It was already booked, so I kind of like waited a little too late, not realizing it was the last week of summer. So if you go, you want to do that, book it early. It's really affordable. I think if your kid is 2 to 7, it's 25 pounds. If your kid is 4 to 7 and you want like a 30-minute session, it's 50 pounds.
Yeah. I'm looking at the prices of these activities, and they're really reasonable, right? Like you said, 25 pounds and 50 pounds for the ponies. You can do private carriage rides for 120 pounds. Like there's a lot in here.
Yeah, especially when you consider, I mean, you're like I said, you're not far from London, right? So like they kind of have you. I think a lot of these services and ideas, like you're competing with like tons of other things you could do in London, and I feel like London everything is expensive, right? So you think they could get away with a lot more. And most of these two activities, something to keep in mind is even if you book way in advance, you can cancel up to 24 hours without charge. I think within
Oh, that's
24
awesome.
hours, it's 100%. But I think that's pretty
Fair.
standard, yeah. Now, horse riding, I think, is 30 minutes for 80 pounds, 60 minutes for 120 pounds. I didn't do that. I'm not a big horse rider fan. But when I was running on property in the morning, I'd see people out on some of the horse trails. And there's a really gorgeous canal that circles part of the property, which we'll get down there. They offer canal rides as well. But I ran along that. You'd see people fishing. There's people that live locally outside the property who would like walk their dogs, and like I had this one guy who was just launching tennis balls into the canal, and his dog was like jumping after him the whole time. It was pretty funny. And like you mentioned, carriage rides, you can do 20 minutes, 2 adults and 3 kids, or 4 adults, 120 pounds. That's not available all the time. It seems like it's like school holidays, I think weekend, holiday weekend, some special things. And then falconry. We
That's
saw
really cool.
some. It is super cool. We saw some people doing that with the falcon. I feel like that's a smidge pricey. It's like 175 pounds for an adult. You can actually just pay to spectate. Like if you don't want to be the one with it, landing on you for 50 pounds. I would have done this, but my daughter said she was too scared to get close to birds, and I wasn't going to lose 250 pounds
Yep,
for
I
my
don't
daughter
blame you.
to, yeah, for my daughter just to like be too scared in the end. And they even offer like, well, they'll bring the bird out for like a group of up to like 10 people for just over 500 pounds. Something I really considered doing is this private canal boat hire. It's just a little too pricey for me.
Yeah, for one
I think,
family. I think if you had two families, it'd be a
yes,
bargain.
I think the other problem too is on this trip I mentioned earlier, we were already in Amsterdam. So, I got my fair share of boats
You got
and
your
canals,
canals.
maybe. It's called the Basingstoke Canal, which I ran most of it one day on my longer run day, and it is really pretty. There's all this cool like bridges that go over it that are also built in like the 18th century, like some pretty masonry. 1 to 3 hours is 800 pounds for up to 10 people. So if you start getting closer to, having a group of 10, I think sure. 1 to 3 hours is 1,200 pounds for 11 to 18 people. I also think it includes either a choice of like a picnic or some like wine service. They give a little something, and then you can upgrade that as well.
Very
It's
cool.
something to consider, especially if you have a big group. It kills part of a day.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing a couple hours for 800 pounds, 2 families, like that's not bad. That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Bird watching is on there. They had an expert bird watcher. I don't know what the right word is. An ornithologist, I don't know, something like that. I kind of discovered my love of birds when I was in Africa. On African safari, I kind of got into birds, but I'm not old enough to pay to bird
I was gonna
watch.
say.
Maybe next year. They have fly fishing, and they have fly fishing for kids. So the price is a little different. Or they have a fishing for kids. Fly fishing, you have to be 8. It's 170 a person. Then each person you add, the price gets reduced. Not a big fly fisherman, but it sounds interesting. I think you go out in the canal and do some fishing. I'll try and run through some of these a little quicker, but like you said, there's just so many activities at this property. You could do archery, which is a 45-minute session, 150 pounds. Axe throwing, 150 pounds starts. Now, the axe throwing and archery facility you can see from like where you eat breakfast. It's kind of like far down the right. They have a really cool old Land Rover that probably hasn't run in 40 years sitting over there. And then somewhere else on property, they've got clay pigeon shooting, starts at about 170 pounds, air rifles for 150, crossbows, which whew,
That's pretty cool.
that's something very, I don't know, it feels very British in my head. I don't know. 150 pounds for that. Laser clay shooting, 150 pounds. Then you get into some of the creative stuff, like they offer a magic show. Up to 4 people is 575 pounds. It's just under an hour. Never thought about having a private magic show, but hey, if you got a little group of people, I think 10 to 19
pretty cool.
people's, yeah, 1,100 pounds. I imagine Four Seasons is not going to charge you for a terrible
That would be
magic
my
show.
guess. It's probably pretty
Yeah.
good.
So, and then you can always get bicycles on property from April to October. They have like these mountain roadie bikes that are free. You can also get Wellingtons for free. So if you want to walk around the property, those things Paddington Bear wears, those big British boots, and they have a little thing to help you put them on, but those are provided free from the property. So if you want to walk around the property and not get your shoes dirty, they offer croquet equipment for free. And then I think you can hire an instructor for £250. I didn't play tennis this trip, but they had 2 really nice looking courts. They have tennis pros. I think an individual session was starting around £75.
That's not bad.
It's interesting. No.
And tennis was complimentary too, or included?
I think you can play if you just want to play yourself. If you don't need an instructor, you want to get out there and use a court. I think that's correct.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think too they would provide racket and balls complimentary as well for your place. You don't even need to have your own racket. The Kids for All Seasons there also was super interesting. So they didn't charge for the kids club.
That's nice.
Yeah. Now, if your kid was under 4, you had to stay as a parent, but they did movies, games, and crafts. My daughter, I was like, hey, let's just go look. Now, it's a separate house off the property. So that was already kind of fun. You walk through these really pretty gardens where they do weddings and things at the property. And I just said to my daughter, I was like, let's just go see what's going on over there. And she popped in and she's like, can I stay? And it sucked because it was only an hour and a half till dinner. So I had to go get her in 90 minutes. But she stayed and had a really fun time. The Olympics were going on, so they were watching the Olympics, and then they made Olympic crafts. And it's very rare my daughter's willing to go to a kids club, so that was really a fun plot twist. And then the fact that it was free was great. They have outside babysitting that's offered as well. Now, standard free kids club I think is 9 to 5 p.m. and you have to pick them up for lunch. So 12:30 to 1:30 they're closed.
Okay.
Yeah, the regular babysitting was pretty cheap. I had looked into it. I don't recall off the top of my head, but it was not an offensive price. Then above the kids club, I just found the babysitting price.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's $15 an hour with a 3-hour minimum, right? And then I think there's a booking fee they put on top of $20. And they allow 2 kids per babysitter, so I think it's pretty reasonable.
Pretty good.
Now, the top floor of that kids club is a teenage game room, which I actually went and played myself. It's pretty fun. They've got an Xbox room, a PlayStation room, and then it's a big kind of bonus room by American House style. And in the bonus room, they had a pool table, ping pong table, that game, I can't think of the name of it, with the little people you spin.
Foosball?
Yeah, foosball. There we go. Some foosball tables. They had an air hockey table up there. It's pretty fun, man. If I was a 14 to 18-year-old kid and I had come with a friend or two, I'd definitely spend some time in there. And then last but not least, it's a super dog-friendly property. And they offer dog walking, which is, pretty cool. It's a minimum of 3 hours, which is kind of trippy. I don't know how many dogs really want to walk for 3 hours a day. But if you have a super active dog, it's $15 an hour. They say it's a 3-hour minimum, I think, no matter how long your dog will walk. And then that's just their activity sheet. And then they have 2 full-size playgrounds. They have a toddler playground that's super small in a little fenced-off area. And then they have a probably 5+ playground with bigger slides, some climbing nets and things. I think we've just been talking now for 20 minutes covering activities of this property. And I think that just goes to show how much stuff is going on.
Yeah, I honestly, when you booked it, I had no idea that there was that much to do at this place. In my mind, it was just oh, it's a nice hotel outside of London, but it seems more like a destination, realistically. All right, so we talked about rooms a bit, getting around the property, things to do. I know you said you spent a day on property. Maybe, how was breakfast? Did you eat at any other restaurants? What'd you love? What'd you not love? Anything like that?
Sure. I will say, I think maybe all of the food that we ate there was excellent quality. I think the one downside you're going to run into, especially if you start staying on a stay maybe longer than 3 nights, is it's a 100-room hotel, right? 120-room hotel, somewhat remotely. You can't walk to another restaurant, obviously. This hotel's in the middle of 500 acres. Even if there was a restaurant right outside, it's a long walk. So they make it seem like on the website there's a couple more restaurants than there really are. 3 of the restaurants they list are really just one restaurant. It's just sides of a restaurant. So they list a pizza restaurant, which we did, and that's really just the patio of the main restaurant. However, they have in this patio, it's enclosed. It's very nicely tented, and they have one of those proper like Naples pizza, the super hot ovens. I forget what all the proper rules of what that is, and the pizza was really good. So I don't want to take away from that, but you're just on the patio of the restaurant you eat breakfast at every day. So, and then they have like a bar that is also kind of like a restaurant that's just the bar of the main restaurant. During the day, they have a spa restaurant that's open, but we didn't make it. The hours are really weird. It's like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. or something. So it's not super functional. Wild Carrot is the main restaurant. And I did mention that it was super confusing, like what was included in my menu, but they never charge us for anything. And like we even played around some days where it says like, hey, if you only get these things, it's this price. If you get this, you could ask. No one really seemed to have that clear of a clue, but also no one seemed to care. Like there were days that we didn't get so they have it separated where there's like a continental breakfast section of the thing. Then there's like the full breakfast section, and then you could order food. So one day I did only continental, one day I did the full, one day I did both, and I ordered food, and we never had a charge. So I ordered drinks sometimes, coffee sometimes. Yeah, so it seemed pretty casual from that sense. But when you actually look at the menu, it's like, oh, do I get this or that? It is a little confusing. We just kind of got charged the maximum that's like free, and then, like I said, your mileage may vary. I don't want to promise that you can just order whatever you want. They did have like caviar, which I imagine you're not going to get away with getting free caviar as well, just as a heads up there. A couple notes that I had is like they had these locally imported yogurts from Hot Jam Lady was her name. That's how good they were. I remember them. They were like fruit mixed, but I literally think they were like made at a farm down the road. I mean, they had like it looked like if someone like, it looked like if your wife had a Cricut machine and made like a label for this yogurt. It was very like
authentic.
Yeah. Their banana bread was good. Their pastries are amazing. They had a great granola. They had some real high quality proteins on the breakfast side. The dinner side's pretty much a full menu. I think we did some pasta days. I did duck one night. I had some good chicken. I think like a whole or half rotisserie chicken from what I remember. My daughter really liked the kids' menu with the spaghetti and a few things. And I generally not much to complain about. They did do tea service, which I didn't get a chance to do. I'm not like the biggest fan of like...
I'm not a big English tea.
Yeah, afternoon English tea and biscuits or, whatever they're trying to push on you. There is a room right next to like Valley in the front called the library, which seemed like people were just working on laptops. But in theory, there's like some light bites there. And I think they offer free coffee all morning. If you're not a big breakfast person, you don't want to sit down just to get some coffee. They had like a coffee bar set up over there. But there's a real possibility if you're not going to leave the property and do activities all day, I think you could eat your breakfast later in the day. I think they offer breakfast till 10 or 11. I don't remember off the top of my head. Get there at the end of breakfast and just load up on breakfast. I think in most cases, you could probably power through to like a 5 o'clock dinner. So finish your breakfast like 10:30, 11, go horseback ride, play croquet, tennis, go to Sharky's Reef, and then do like an earlier dinner. And that way you're only really covering one meal a day, right? Which is always nice.
Not bad, especially if you're remote like that and you don't really have any other options than eat at the Four Seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm not going anywhere with it. Being a property that big, do they grow anything or have animals on there like that they're using in the restaurant? Do you know? Or is it probably just importing everything? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. They do have some bulls on property.
That's cool.
Which I didn't touch on. They also, some of them have like shaggy little hair. They do have signs near all the fences with bulls that say like, do not approach bulls. Like these are bulls and they will hurt you. So I don't know if someone's been hurt before. They're just being overly precautious. All the people that live in those homes nearby seem to have either like horses or some other animals or like a bunch of cute, like very like hunting dogs type thing. So I think you're going to get that whole vibe out there. I don't know if you're familiar. There's this magazine in England that I had seen before called Horse and Hound, which is kind of like it's probably the US equivalent to maybe like Country Living. It's like very much like, how to be a rural Englishman and ride horses and hunt and be proper. I felt like I was transformed into this magazine at this property. Like it felt
That's
like,
awesome.
I felt like I was like a very like rich nobleman from the, from a time ago, like living in this property. And a couple cool things I can just go into the property. So they did a really good job, I think, maintaining everything that I saw on the property. The horse stables, unfortunately, are pretty far from the main property, but they will take you down there in a golf cart if you ask. So they do those. They have like a passport for my daughter, so like you go get stamps at the spa, the equestrian center, and a few places, and then they had like a humongous toy chest of like Peppa Pig toys she got to pick from. So she was super excited about that. Yeah, which, funny fact, we stayed, I think, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Tuesday to Friday. And then that weekend, they actually had Peppa Pig come visit, like in costumes. Like Peppa and George came the day after we left, which we saw on their Instagram, which was kind of cool as well.
So that must be a big thing then, right? People staying there to do Peppa Pig stuff. Does that seem like the case? Because where did you go to see Peppa Pig? Was there...
So Peppa Pig World is about 45 minutes east, so like further from London from the property. I can't tell. People seemed shocked that that's where we were going when we were there, but I don't know if that's because we're American and people were like, because we were like, oh yeah, we came out here to go to Peppa Pig World, and people kind of like laughed or like were like, that's interesting.
So that's not like hey, everyone stays here to go to Peppa Pig World.
Yeah, probably not. From the few people I met and talked to and kind of the vibe I got, it was mostly people that did the hour to 2 hour drive, probably depending on traffic, from parts of London. And this was like it's kind of like we're like getting away, but also not roughing it at the same time.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the girls were really excited about, the ponies and horses. And it just seemed like a lot of like city kids that were like out for the weekend. And interesting. So this place is called Dogmersfield Park, which, you want to talk about history? There's a Doomsday book that was published in England in 1086. Okay. And they talk about this property. So like you're talking 1,000 years of history walking around this place, and you definitely feel it. And if you're a real history buff, King Henry VIII actually met his first wife, which I looked up before this and recorded on Wikipedia. He had like 7 wives, but his first wife,
Busy
the first
man.
is always the best, right? Catherine of Aragon, he actually met her at Dogmersfield Park in the property itself. So that's pretty neat. And like I said, if you are into history at all, they've restored their 16th century dovecotes, which is where they used to store food before, refrigeration, all this. And apparently the bigger the building, the more wealthy you were. So these are very big dovecotes. And then at some point, this property was built by a local nobleman. I don't know what happened. And then at some point, it was actually a all-girls boarding school. And then from all-girls boarding school, they turned it into a Four Seasons hotel. RPW did all the rooms and suites in the event space. And they did such a good job of it being like a very English manor, but not feeling like you're staying in your like grandma's creepy, farmhouse.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which there's a real fine line there, because you want that experience, but you also don't want to be like, ooh. Four Seasons interior design, I think, is also something, aside from service, they seem to do really well. And this is not an exception, I would say, for sure.
And all right, so the place sounds amazing. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, right? Talking about booking it, right, with Four Seasons Preferred Partners. It was fairly reasonable priced for what you got, if I remember right. Now, obviously, pricing can change depending on time of year and everything, but there was a third night free promo going on when you booked it. So do you remember about what you paid for it? Because I remember it being a pretty good deal.
I want to say it was about $850 a night, and then we got the third night free. It worked out to, I think, £1,700. Right, give or take.
That's not bad, right? So convert that to US. What you're talking, $600 a night, all in average, something like that, $650 maybe, plus or minus. Yeah. I don't know.
And I think we did all our dinners on property, and I think we walked out of there somewhere between $2,100 and $2,200 for 3 nights with meals.
That's not bad with meals and everything for Four Seasons. That seems, I don't want to say cheap or reasonable, but that's a nice luxury property for that price. Like you're getting a lot for your money.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things is, I think you find yourself in London a lot, right? If you're an international traveler, I think there's maybe even a scenario where you go to work for London, to London. Have your family come out a long weekend and pop over there versus walking around the Thames and doing the Ferris wheel. And like I said, you fly your family into Heathrow, you even meet them there. You've only got 40 minutes to this property, and it's just, if you've ever been like, man, I want to live like, people lived in the olden days, or I wonder what the English countryside is
Downton
like.
Abbey.
Yeah, exactly. Go put yourself in Downton Abbey for a weekend for sure.
All right, so I'll ask you this question: 40 minutes outside, would you do one night there? Would that be worth it? Like if you were flying into London, you got a 23-hour layover or something, you think you'd do a night there?
I think it depends on the flight schedule, but if you landed at noon and you were headed out the next morning, I think, or if you got in really late but you left really late the next night, if you could put some good time on property, I think yes. I think that's the most powerful statement I can make about this hotel, is I think it's kind of transformed my idea of going to Europe. I'm kind of man, I'd love a 2 or 3 day layover in England, even to start my trip or end my trip. And I think the fact that I'm ooh, I can plan a layover and come back here is huge. I will say I made some friends in Algarve, which is, essentially an exile of England. Everyone there is English, if you don't know. And I met some people actually from, I want to say South Wales. Apologies if not, maybe North Wales. But his kid, I told him we were going to the Four Seasons Hampshire. He said they had never been, but his kids actually love a property that's close by, which is the Fairmont Windsor Castle. So I think my next layover, I'm going to go check that property out. It seems like a little bit of a more budget friendly version of what we got here, but it's also closer to London, and it's on the Windsor. Nice. It's on the Windsor Castle grounds, and I think we brought up last episode with the SLS Baha Mar. It's also in the Accor. It's in the Accor group, which we kind of talked about. It seems to get really ignored, I think, especially in terms of luxury travel and places to look at. So I kind of want to do either maybe 2 nights at each, or do Fairmont and come back. But I always love Four Seasons, but I think most of the time once I've stayed at a city Four Seasons, I'm like, oh, that was great. They did such a good job, but I don't feel called back. It's the Four Seasons Mexico City I mentioned earlier, we stayed there. It's a great property price wise. It's amazing. But if I go back to Mexico City and that hotel works out, sure.
But it's not a destination for you.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about going to go stay at that hotel. Where, man, this property was just, I don't know. It really allowed you to transform yourself for a couple of days, or cosplay yourself as a rich English countryman, which not a lot of hotels.
Joey the English gentleman.
Yeah, I think not a lot of hotels give you that chance. I think a lot of hotels are either you're going somewhere where the destination is just so out of this world that it transforms. Think Four Seasons, just to stay on brand. Seychelles or Maldives, right? The transformative process is really just in the location and how the Four Seasons will present it to you. And then, you've got these Four Seasons in the city, which I think they give you a great removal from the city, and you kind of lose some of that hecticness of some of these big towns you can be in. But with this one, it's it's really the property and how they're presenting it and how they're building all the stuff around the property that just got me so excited to be there and want to go back, which is pretty unique.
Yeah, it sounds pretty awesome. It's going to definitely be on my list now to check out. All right, so we've been talking about the property for a good bit. Anything else you want to add on this property that you can think of?
Maybe a couple of things to touch on. I do really think if you're on a UK road trip, or like you mentioned, a long layover, you're pretty accessible from Gatwick and Heathrow. Something else that's actually within an hour drive of this property is Stonehenge. So, if you kind of want to see Stonehenge, but you're not trying to build a whole vacation around it, and you need a luxury base, this hotel, there's another idea for that. I mentioned Paulton's Park. That's kind of a grown-up amusement park. Think for our American listeners, some kind of Premier Six Flags type thing, it seemed like. And it's in the same ticket and attached to Peppa Pig World. So if you've got a little kid, that's also an hour away. The Marwell Zoo, we didn't get a chance, which I'm a big zoo person. We kind of zooed ourselves out on this trip before we got to England. But that's also close. I did mention Jane Austen's house is also nearby. And as long as you're willing to do about an hour drive, there's a lot of outside activities too, where if you maybe did a longer stay, like call it, say, a 5-night stay here, I think you do like one day on property, then one day you go see Stonehenge and check some stuff out. Then one day on property, the next day you go to Paulton's Park, where I think you could get a real good balance of exploring some of the English countryside. If it's summer, you could even consider maybe going down to like Bournemouth or Portsmouth and doing like a beach day. It's probably like a sub 2 hour drive if you're like adventurous, but you have this really nice luxury hotel base. So for me, that's what I want, and that's why we have this podcast, because I love luxury hotels. And you too. Like, to me, I'd rather like have a real nice luxury hotel base and do some driving. I know not everyone's, is into that on vacation, but it's just another way to think about this property and how you can integrate it into something. I will also say, since when I stayed in this property in August, the Park Hyatt London was not open. And now that is also open. So I'm really like stacking up these English properties where I'm like, I have a quest to stay at every Park Hyatt in the world. I just kind of made it up myself. If you subtract,
I like it.
If you subtract the Chinese properties that I'm missing, I'm doing pretty good. I think all total, I'm 70% done. If you cut the Chinese properties, I'm pushing like 90%. So I really need to stay there. I've got this Fairmont Windsor Castle, and I want to come back here. So like England is really growing into like a powerhouse of properties for me to visit.
I'll start checking those off the list. All right, so just real quick, I want to hit on Four Seasons Preferred Partners. We are happy to help you out with booking it. Like Joey had mentioned before, all Four Seasons participate in Four Seasons Preferred Partners. Most of them, there's no stay limit, so even if you're staying a single night, we can get you these benefits, which, breakfast, property credit, typically starting at $100, and then going on up depending what type of room you're staying in. We can get you a welcome amenity. We can tailor it towards what you're looking for, whether it's a weekend away with your boyfriend, girlfriend, anniversary, you got the kids with you, whatever that is. We've got, upgrades based on availability. Sometimes properties will confirm that at time of booking if there's a promotion going on. Early check-in, late checkout based on availability. So really just adding some great value if you're already planning on staying at the Four Seasons. No reason not to use a preferred partner to get you some extra perks. Yeah,
and the other properties we mentioned, right, the Fairmont, we can help you book through Accor, and the Park Hyatt can also be done through Privé through Hyatt as well. So there's many other properties. And listen, if you've made it this far, you're obviously an English country enthusiast, or I don't know, what of these things, or, you've got a trip coming up, or you're a big Horse and Hound reader, and you just want to see what the English countryside is like from my perspective. Either way, I think if you've got some other properties that are outside of London that are great luxury properties, put them in the comments for me or shoot us a message, DM on Instagram. I really want to find some more properties, and I'm really getting to the point where not next summer, but maybe summer 2026, once the World Cup is wrapped, I might just do like a UK driving tour and try and find some of these other properties. So I'm interested. English luxury has kind of impressed me on this one. It's not really where you think of like getting great value at a luxury property versus, somewhere like a Mexico or cheaper currency place, but they knocked it out of the park for us, man. I'm really excited. I'm really glad I stayed there.
All right. So I know we've done a game in the last show, and I know you've got one for me. I'm going to ask you some random Four Seasons questions.
Oh boy. Okay.
So I just pulled a couple random ones. I'll try and do multiple choice for ones that I can.
Okay.
We won't go too serious into this one though. All
okay.
Right, first one. Where was the first Four Seasons hotel opened?
Toronto.
Canada. I was going to give you 4 options, so you already knew that one. All right. Which Four Seasons, if you were thinking overwater bungalows with glass floors, where would you be looking? I'll give you 4 options.
Okay.
Seychelles, Maui, Maldives, or Bora Bora?
Well, the 3 places I was debating, obviously, are on your list. My gut says Maldives, but I think you wouldn't have given it to me if it was Maldives, is my suspicion. Bora Bora, I feel like the property is like, I want to think Bora Bora, but I feel like the property was built too long ago. So I'm going to go Seychelles.
This is saying Bora Bora. They all may have it. I don't know. I may have to fact check it, but this says Bora Bora.
My gut was saying Bora Bora, but I was not trusting my gut, so that's on me. All right, what else?
That's all right. Which Four Seasons? This is the same one. All right. Do you know what year the Four Seasons brand was founded?
Oh,
I would have never guessed
1973.
61.
Wasn't that far.
Which Four Seasons hotel has the longest outdoor infinity pool in the Western Hemisphere? You've stayed here, I think.
Man, I thought I had an idea, and then you told me that I've stayed there, and then I just... Is it the longest Four Seasons infinity pool or the longest pool?
This is the longest outdoor infinity pool in the Western Hemisphere. I've also stayed here, and I have a picture in it.
I don't think I've stayed at this property, but man, Is it Four Seasons Puerto Vallarta?
Nope. This
All
one,
right,
I would not have guessed this.
Hit me with it.
Four Seasons Orlando.
Oh, I have stayed there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's that big long infinity pool that looks out over the lake or the
That's
pond.
the
It's not
biggest infinity pool in the Western Hemisphere?
That's what it says. We have to fact check these. So if someone's listening and they say these are incorrect, I would love to hear the correct answer.
That is another property that we need to review, though, I will say. Like,
That's such a great property.
it's really an underrated property. It gets pricey, but like, man, if you want to do Disney at a high end level and you don't want to be like because I'm okay to do Disney, but I'm not I'm not you. I'm not a Disney-ophile. I'm not a Disney enthusiast.
Yep.
And the Four Seasons is like this great way to like do Disney, but not be like constantly slapped in the face with Disney. So we do need to do a full episode on that property at some point. But anyway, you got any other questions for me?
I think those were pretty good ones.
Okay, I started out good and then fell behind.
Well, that was all right. I just pulled some random questions, so
I don't
figured
think
we'd
you're
do
ready
some
for
Four
this
Seasons
one.
ones. I'm
Let's
not.
see how good you can do. All right, I'm gonna only make you do. I'm looking for top 5 on this one. Okay. This is a list I created myself. As two people from the South, I hope we will enjoy this, and I think most of our listeners might also enjoy this. But I need you to name. I gotta start over. Jamie, name me the top 5 Four Seasons that have the closest geographic distance to a Waffle House.
I'm sure Four Seasons Orlando's got to be close.
Orlando is number 4, 5.4 miles.
Is there still a Four Seasons in Atlanta? If there is, there's got to be number 1.
Atlanta is number 1. Four Seasons Atlanta, 1.5 miles.
And so is this anywhere?
Well, it's America.
Okay. Well, yeah. All right. What else? We got Four Seasons in Miami.
Miami is number 10, so it's not on the top 5, but you're in the right range.
Four Seasons DC.
DC is not on the list.
New York is probably not on there.
Nope.
Man, this is a tough one. New Orleans.
New Orleans
Got
is
it now. New Orleans. Yep,
number
New Orleans
2,
on there.
1.7 miles.
Nashville. So these are two. Nashville and New Orleans, both very new Four Seasons. They're on my list to check out.
Number 3, 3.7 miles. So you're only missing number 5. Think where I live, maybe closer to me.
Houston. Four Seasons Houston.
Keep going. You're close. You're hot.
What else we got there? Is there Dallas?
No, we have no Four Seasons in Dallas
I didn't
right
think
now.
so. What's the other one? Is it where? I'm trying to cheat, but not cheat. I'm trying to think what the name of the one is. What else you got down there?
Just think the only other good city in Texas.
I don't want to say a wrong answer here. So San Antonio?
So
Austin.
close.
Austin.
There you go.
Austin.
Austin. Number 5 at 5.9.
Okay.
I'll round out the top 10 for you since Fort Lauderdale is 7.2 miles. Denver is 8.5, which I would not have considered Denver. And then Miami Surfside. I could have given you that one, I guess. Miami Surfside is 10.8 at number 8. Houston is 15.4 at 9. And then Miami is 10 at 15.7.
Good list. That's a good one.
Yeah, I came up with that one on my own.
I like that.
It's creative. You know, I just want to combine Four Seasons and Waffle House anytime I can. That's good.
I like that.
You did pretty strong on that one. So, man, we were afraid this episode was going to be short, and we just cracked an hour. So,
I think once we got in that activity list, that was crazy. All you could do there.
I know. It was good stuff. So, yeah, I think that's a wrap. I think episode 2 is in the bag, right? I think we covered
good.
everything. Well, stay tuned. Come back next week for episode 3. We'll see you guys later.